Nolan's primitive ship shook like a leaf in a storm as the sleek Kraxon raider ships blasted chunks of metal from its hull. Flashing red alerts screamed of shield failure. In minutes, the rusting freighter he called home would be nothing but a cloud of shrapnel. Nolan Williams, a seasoned human cargo pilot, had been running shipments across the fringe systems in his outdated but reliable vessel, Old Bessie, for years without incident. Now, ambushed by the notorious Kraxon slavers, escape seemed impossible. The pirate commander's sneer crackled over the comms. "Prepare to be boarded, primitive. Your ship and your life are now mine." Tractor beams locked on, inexorably dragging Nolan's freighter toward the raider's bristling guns. Slavery or death awaited if Nolan couldn't pull off a miracle. His hand hovered over the activation button for his prototype FTL drive, an untested invention that would either be his salvation or his destruction. Sweat poured down his face. The stakes couldn't be higher. Nolan had to bet everything on this one desperate gambler, or humanity would be humiliated by these alien brutes yet again. He slammed his fist onto the button, uttering a defiant roar as his ship leaped into the unknown faster than light. Nolan's ship burst out of FTL, the metal groaning as if the vessel itself was screaming in pain. Red lights flashed across the control panel, a strobe of warnings indicating critical damage to the ship's systems. Life support was failing, the oxygen levels plummeting with each passing second. Through the cracked windshield, an unfamiliar star system stretched out before him, the void dotted with distant planets and the glowing embers of far-off stars. The ship shuddered, the hull buckling under the strain of the untested jump. Nolan frantically scanned the nearby planets, searching for any sign of habitability. There, a green and blue marble, a remote Eleani colony called Zephyria, according to the ship's database. With alarms blaring in his ears, Nolan wrestled with the controls, guiding the crippled freighter towards the planet's surface. The ship hit the atmosphere like a meteor, flames licking at the hull as it streaked across the sky. Nolan gritted his teeth, fighting to keep the ship steady as it plummeted towards the ground. With a bone-jarring impact, the freighter slammed into the earth, metal screeching as it tore itself apart. Nolan stumbled from the smoking wreckage, his head spinning, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead. He had barely taken 2 steps before he was surrounded by armed Eleani security forces, their weapons trained on him. A tall, imposing figure stepped forward, his uniform adorned with the insignia of a commander. "I am Commander Zorix of the Eleani Defense Force. Identify yourself, human," he barked, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. Nolan raised his hands slowly, his voice hoarse. "My name is Nolan Williams. I'm a cargo pilot. I was attacked by Kraxon raiders and had to make an emergency jump. Please, I need help." His words trailed off as a wave of dizziness washed over him. The world tilted, darkness creeping into the edges of his vision. Nolan felt his knees buckle, and then he was falling, the ground rushing up to meet him. He awoke to the sterile white of a medical bay, the steady beep of monitors filling the air. An Eleani doctor, his name tag reading Kilix, stood at the foot of the bed, studying a data pad. "You're awake," Kilix said, his tone clinical. "Your injuries were severe, but you will recover. Your ship, however, will take some time to repair. Our technicians are unfamiliar with human technology." The door hissed open, and Commander Zorix strode in, his face a mask of suspicion. "Mr. Williams, we have some questions for you. Our long-range sensors detected the energy signature of your FTL jump. It was unlike anything we've seen before. How did your primitive ship achieve such an advanced feat?" Nolan's mind raced, realizing the potential value of his invention. If the Eleani learned of his prototype FTL drive, they would stop at nothing to acquire it. He schooled his features into a look of confusion, shaking his head. I don't know. It must have been a fluke, a 1 in a million chance. I'm just a humble freighter pilot. I don't understand the science behind it." Zorix's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening. "I don't believe in coincidences, Mr. Williams. Until we get to the bottom of this, you're under house arrest. Your ship will remain in our custody while we study it." Nolan's heart sank as Zorix turned on his heel and left the room. He was trapped, his ship in the hands of the Eliani. He had to find a way to recover his vessel and escape the planet before they uncovered his secret. The fate of humanity rested on his shoulders, and he would not let them down. Nolan's mind raced as he lay in the sterile medical bay, the weight of his predicament pressing down on him. He needed to retrieve the data from his ship before the Eliani discovered the true potential of his FTL drive. An idea formed, and he turned to Keelix, who was busying himself with a datapad. "Doc, I need to grab some personal effects from my ship. Sentimental stuff, you know. Family photos, a lucky charm, that sort of thing. Think you could arrange a quick visit to the hangar for me?" Nolan put on his most convincing smile, hoping the doctor would take pity on him. Keelix looked up, his expression thoughtful. "I suppose a short visit couldn't hurt. You're recovering well, and it might do you some good to see your ship. I'll arrange an escort." Nolan nodded, relief flooding through him. "Thanks, Doc, I appreciate it." A short while later, Nolan found himself standing in the hangar, the twisted remains of his ship laid out before him. Eliani technicians swarmed over the vessel, poking and prodding at the unfamiliar technology. Nolan's escort, a burly Eliani security officer, stood nearby, his eyes never leaving the human. Nolan climbed into the ship, making a show of rummaging through the debris. When he was sure no one was looking, he quickly downloaded the schematics and research data for his FTL drive onto a small portable drive, slipping it into his pocket. He grabbed a few meaningless trinkets for show and climbed back out, nodding to his escort. "Got what I needed. Thanks for the help." Back in his quarters, Nolan paced restlessly, his mind whirling with escape plans. A knock at the door startled him, and he opened it to find a young Eliani male standing outside, his eyes wide with excitement. "Mr. Williams, my name is Tarek. I'm a technician working on your ship. I hope you don't mind, but I've always been fascinated by human culture. I was wondering if you could tell me a bit about your world." Nolan hesitated, then stepped aside, allowing Tarek to enter. The young Eliani's enthusiasm was infectious, and Nolan found himself warming to him as they talked. As the conversation turned to Eliani society, Tarek's expression grew serious. "I'm part of a small group of Eliani who believe our government's isolationist policies are holding us back. We want to explore the galaxy, to learn from other cultures. Mr. Williams, I can help you escape, but I need a favor in return. Take me with you. Show me the wonders of the universe beyond our borders." Nolan considered the offer, weighing the risks. Having an ally on the inside could be invaluable, and Tarek seemed sincere in his desire to help. He nodded slowly, a plan forming in his mind. "All right, Tarek, you've got a deal. Let's figure out how to get out of here." As Nolan and Tarek plotted, Commander Zorix paced the command center, his frustration mounting. The Eliani scientists were making little progress in understanding the humans' FTL technology, and his superiors were demanding answers. He slammed his fist on the console, making a decision. "Move the humans' ship to the secure military facility. I want our best engineers working on it around the clock. And bring me the human. I'm done playing games." Nolan was roughly dragged from his quarters by armed guards, his protests falling on deaf ears. As he was marched through the corridors, he caught a glimpse of Tarek's face, pale with shock. The young Eliani slipped away, hurrying to warn the resistance. Time was running out. If they didn't act fast, the military would crack the secret of Nolan's FTL drive, and any hope of escape would be lost. Tarek's heart pounded as he crept through the detention center's stark corridors, his stolen guard uniform fitting a bit too snugly. The other resistance members fanned out, their own disguises allowing them to blend in with the facility's staff. Tarek's hand shook slightly as he swiped the pilfered security card, the door to Nolan's cell sliding open with a soft hiss. Nolan looked up from his cot, his eyes widening as Tarek hurried inside. "Tarek, what are you doing here?" "We're getting you out," Tarek whispered, tossing Nolan a spare guard uniform. "Put this on, quickly." As Nolan dressed, Tarek kept watch, his nerves stretched taut. A sudden blaring of alarms made them both jump, the sound piercing in the confined space. "Shit!" Tarek hissed, realizing he must have triggered a silent alarm. "We need to move now!" The pair burst from the cell, racing down the corridor as shouts echoed from behind them. Two guards rounded the corner, batons raised, but Nolan leaped forward with surprising speed and grace. A quick flurry of blows sent the guards crumpling to the floor, Nolan snatching up one of their fallen weapons. Tarek gaped at him. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" Nolan flashed a grin. "You don't survive long as a fringe pilot without picking up a few tricks." They sprinted through the facility, joined by the other resistance fighters, as they converged on the rendezvous point. Bursting into the hangar, they piled into a waiting military transport, the engine roaring to life under Tarek's hands. The transport smashed through the hangar doors, alarms howling in its wake. In the command center, Zorik slammed his fist against the console, his face twisted with rage as he watched the blip of the stolen vehicle racing across the screen. "Initiate a full lockdown," he snarled at his subordinates. "I want hunter teams deployed immediately. Bring them back, dead or alive." On the streets, chaos reigned as security forces swarmed in pursuit of the fleeing transport. Nolan clutched the sides of his seat as Tarek swerved and wove through the traffic, the whine of sirens always close behind. Pulse blasts seared the air around them, Tarek gritting his teeth as he coaxed more speed from the straining engines. The city limits came into view, but their relief was short-lived as they saw the military facility looming ahead, its gates heavily guarded. Tarek brought the transport to a shuddering halt, despair etched on his face. Nolan looked at the assembled resistance members, his expression grim. "I have a plan. I'll give myself up, create a distraction. While they're focused on me, you slip in and get my ship. The galaxy needs that FTL drive." Tarek shook his head. "No, we're not leaving you behind." Nolan gripped Tarek's shoulder. "You have to. This is bigger than me. The Eliani need this technology if they're ever going to break free from their isolation. You can show them the way." He pressed the data drive into Tarek's hand, holding his gaze. "Take this. Everything you need to build the drive is here. Use it well. Explore the stars. Show your people the wonders that await them out there." Tarek blinked back tears, nodding. "I will, I promise." Nolan took a deep breath and stepped out of the transport, his hands raised as he walked towards the gathered forces. Zorix emerged from the ranks, his expression triumphant. As the commander gloated over his prize, Tarek and his team slipped unseen into the facility. The data drive clutched tightly in Tarek's hand. The future of his people, of the entire galaxy, rested on their success. Failure was not an option. Nolan stood tall, his eyes locked with Zorix's as the commander approached, a triumphant sneer on his face. Zorix circled Nolan, his voice dripping with condescension. "Did you really think you could outsmart us, human? Your little rebellion ends here." Nolan remained silent, his jaw clenched, refusing to give Zorix the satisfaction of a response. The commander opened his mouth to gloat further, but his words were drowned out by a sudden series of explosions that rocked the military facility. Alarms blared as smoke billowed from the buildings, the sound of gunfire echoing through the air. Zorix's eyes widened, his smug expression morphing into one of disbelief and rage. He barked orders into his comm unit, his voice rising with each word. "All units, forget the human. Defend the ship at all costs. I want every available soldier in that hangar now." In the ensuing chaos, Nolan seized his chance. He lunged forward, his fist connecting with Zorix's jaw in a satisfying crunch. The commander stumbled back, dazed, as Nolan followed up with a swift kick to the midsection. Zorix crumpled to the ground, unconscious. Nolan sprinted towards the hangar, his heart pounding in his chest. He burst through the doors, taking in the scene of destruction before him. Tarek and the resistance fighters were pinned down behind crates and debris, exchanging fire with the Eliani soldiers who poured into the hangar. Nolan dove for cover beside Tarek, who greeted him with a strained smile. "About time you showed up. We need to get to your ship fast." Together, they fought their way across the hangar, dodging pulse blasts and returning fire. The ship loomed ahead, its hull scorched and battered from the battle raging around it. They clambered aboard, Nolan throwing himself into the pilot's seat as Tarek sealed the hatch behind them. "Get that FTL drive powered up," Tarek shouted over the din of explosions outside. "I'll hold them off as long as I can." Nolan's fingers flew over the controls, coaxing the damaged systems to life. The ship shuddered as the FTL drive began to charge, the console sparking and smoking from the strain. Zorix's men unleashed a relentless barrage on the ship, the hull groaning under the onslaught. A cry of pain tore Nolan's attention from the controls. Tarek slumped against the wall, a dark stain spreading across his chest. Nolan rushed to his side, cradling his friend in his arms. "Tarek, stay with me," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "We're almost out of here." Tarek shook his head weakly, blood bubbling at the corners of his mouth. "No, Nolan, you have to go. Leave me behind. Get the drive to safety." Nolan hesitated, torn between his loyalty to his friend and the knowledge that the FTL drive could change the course of history. Tarek gripped his hand, his eyes fierce despite the pain. "Go, Nolan. Finish what we started. Show the galaxy what we can achieve when we stand together." With a heavy heart, Nolan nodded, gently laying Tarek down. He returned to the controls just as Zorix's men breached the ship's hull, their shouts growing louder. The FTL drive hummed, the ship vibrating with barely contained energy. In a blinding flash, the ship vanished, leaving the hangar and the battle behind. Nolan slumped in his seat, his body battered and his heart heavy with the weight of Tarek's sacrifice. He set a course for human space, knowing he had to warn Earth of the impending threat. As the stars streaked past the viewscreen, a message blinked on the console. Nolan's blood ran cold as he read the words. "You can't run forever, Primitive. I will find you, and I will make you pay, Dr. Craxon." Nolan clenched his jaw, realizing the true scope of the events he had set in motion. The Eleani, the Raiders, the entire galaxy would be forever changed by his actions, and he would be at the center of it all, for better or worse. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.